The air in the courtroom was not just still, it was pregnant with a sharp, sterile scent of disinfectant and impending conflict. Impending means about to happen, forthcoming. This tension was not born of legal complexity, but of a far older, deeper human drama. The rupture of familial trust, the moment a sacrosanct bond is irrevocably broken over the altar of material desire. Sacrosanct describes something regarded as too important or valuable to be interfered with, often used for religious or moral principles, but here referring to the deeply held, almost spiritual belief in the inviolability of family. For Eloise, sitting stiffly beside her formidable counsel, Vivian Hale, the proceedings were not merely about the title to a two-story house. They were about the disinterment of a lifelong truth. Disinterment literally means the action of digging up something buried, especially a corpse, but here it is used metaphorically to mean the difficult and painful uncovering of a hidden truth. The truth that the unconditional love she had always sought from her parents, Malcolm and Rosalind, was conditional, priced, and ultimately less valuable to them than the perceived welfare or, more accurately, the entitlement of her younger sister, Celeste. Eloise's journey to this moment was a modern parable, a narrative deeply interwoven with the spirit of the American dream, albeit one constantly threatened by internal forces. She was the embodiment of a self-made professional, the engineer who had adhered strictly to the tenets of hard work, delayed gratification, and financial discipline, a discipline that felt almost puritanical in its rigor. Interwoven means blended or laced together, while tenets are principles or beliefs, especially one of the main principles of a religion or philosophy. For 6 years, she had lived a life of deliberate scarcity so that she could achieve a single goal: sovereignty over her own space, a home that was a tangible monument to her grit. This is a crucial element in understanding the universal appeal of her story. It speaks to the historical struggles of countless individuals, particularly women and minorities, whose claims to property and independent existence were often contested or dismissed by established structures of power and patriarchal expectation. The very act of a young woman like Eloise achieving home ownership through sheer, unremitting effort mirrors the historical shift in English-speaking societies toward recognizing individual economic agency. Contested means disputed or argued over, and unremitting means never stopping or slackening, incessant. The house was her declaration of independence. When her parents and sister decided to challenge this ownership in court, fabricating a narrative of a verbal agreement and designated funds that never existed, they weren't just attempting theft. They were attempting to annul her history, to deny the validity of her 6 years of sacrifice. Annul means to declare invalid or to abolish. Malcolm's pronouncement, "That house belongs to your sister," delivered with the cold authority of a decree, was a powerful, chilling echo of historical legal systems where the will of the patriarch often superseded documented proof. Superseded means to take the place of a person or thing previously in authority or use, supplant. Rosalind's participation, cloaked in the soft, guilt-laden language of making things right for your sister, demonstrated the insidious nature of emotional manipulation used to enforce an unjust social order within the family. Eloise's initial reaction, shock, disbelief, a feeling of the world splitting in two, was a form of cognitive dissonance. The person she thought she was, the dutiful daughter, was being replaced by the person she was forced to become, a litigant, a defender of her own hard-won truth. The alacrity with which her family moved to legal action, coupled with Celeste's brazen and public social media posts, was a calculated attempt to use both legal and social pressure to achieve their nefarious end. Alacrity means brisk and cheerful readiness, and nefarious means wicked or criminal. However, the betrayal also acted as a catalyst. The intervention of her friends, Mara and Ashton, and the swift, professional caliber of Vivian Hale, represent the essential, found family that often becomes the true support structure in the modern, individualistic world, a refutation of the idea that blood is always thicker than water. Caliber refers to the quality or ability of someone or something, and refutation is the action of proving a statement or theory to be wrong or false. The discovery that her father had previously tried to convince her grandparents to alter the will, revealing a long-standing, deep-seated disposition toward favoring Celeste, was the final, sobering piece of the puzzle. This confirmed that the court case was not a spontaneous mistake, but the inevitable eruption of a suppressed, unequal philosophy that had governed her entire childhood. Disposition means a person's inherent qualities of mind and character, or a tendency. It forced Eloise to confront the full reality of her family's betrayal, shifting her from a state of emotional paralysis into one of clear, focused, and righteous resistance. The attempted unauthorized entry by Celeste was the physical manifestation of her sister's sense of entitlement, turning a civil dispute into a quasi-criminal act, providing Vivian with the irrefutable proof needed to demonstrate the plaintiff's underlying motivation. Unauthorized entry is a legal term for entering a property without permission, and irrefutable means impossible to deny or disprove. Eloise learned that morning that to truly learn English, or any language, is to master the vocabulary of self-advocacy and legal defense, the words that delineate ownership and define justice. What is the most difficult word in the English language to use when describing a deep, personal betrayal? Is it perfidy, treachery, or simply choice? The second chapter of Eloise's journey unfolds in the stark, unforgiving light of the courtroom, an environment designed to strip away the soft edges of human emotion and deal only in the unvarnished currency of fact. Unvarnished means plain and straightforward, not disguised or embellished. This is the moment of truth, the point where the personal, emotionally charged narrative of the family collides violently with the objective, impartial mechanism of the law. Impartial means treating all rivals or disputants equally, fair and just. Judge Evelyn Carter, whose very presence demanded a cessation of all frivolity, served as the perfect historical metaphor for the rule of law itself, the ultimate arbiter who stands above the fray of personal animosity. Frivolity is the quality or state of being frivolous. Triviality. The plaintiff's argument, presented by Bernard Langford, rested entirely on the fragile foundation of a verbal family agreement and implied expectations, a claim as flimsy as the parchment it might have been written on. Implied means suggested but not directly expressed, implicit. This tactic is a fascinating echo of historical property disputes, particularly those concerning primogeniture and inheritance in English common law, where intent and custom often wrestled with written documentation. The system often favored the male heir, or, in this contemporary case, the favored sibling, over the one who had demonstrably earned their keep, a subtle but deeply rooted bias against the self-made individual. Langford attempted to use the language of patrimony and family obligation to mask the mendacity of their claim. Patrimony means property inherited from one's father or male ancestor, and mendacity is untruthfulness. Malcolm, Rosalind, and Celeste each took the stand to paint a picture of Eloise as the rapacious sister who had snatched a preordained gift. Rapacious means aggressively greedy or grasping. Malcolm spoke with a strained air of rectitude, Rosalind with tearful, manipulative sympathy, and Celeste with a calculated blend of entitlement and victimhood. Their testimony was a masterclass in sophistry, the use of clever but false arguments, especially with the intention of deceiving. They were attempting to leverage the emotional weight of family to subvert documented reality, a profound philosophical moment in the narrative. They were saying, in effect, that their wish, their narrative, was stronger than Eloise's work ethic and legal proof. Vivian Hale's counterargument was a study in exacting logic and unflappable composure. Exacting means making great demands on one's skill, attention, or other resources, and unflappable means having or showing calmness in a crisis. She didn't engage in their emotional warfare. She simply and methodically presented the facts. 6 years of payroll stubs, bank statements, and savings transfers, all dovetailing to form an irrefutable paper trail. Dovetailing means to fit or combine together perfectly. This focus on meticulous documentation is a crucial lesson in the modern world. Verisimilitude is often found in the spreadsheet, not the sentiment. Verisimilitude is the appearance of being true or real. The power of her case was the juxtaposition of their fabricated story against Eloise's demonstrable, quantifiable labor. The true dramatic pivot, however, came with the testimony of Uncle Raymond and Aunt Miriam. These witnesses, family by blood but aligned with justice by principle, delivered the coup de grace, the final, decisive blow. Coup de grace is a phrase borrowed from French, meaning a stroke of mercy, but often used for a death blow or a decisive action that ends a conflict. They testified not only that the original was stipulated an equal split, but, more importantly, that Malcolm had actively and unsuccessfully sought to change it to favor Celeste. This revelation shifted the family's action from a simple property dispute to a calculated, long-term plan rooted in systemic favoritism, a predilection that defined the familial atmosphere. Predilection is a preference or special liking for something, a bias in favor of something. The stillness in the courtroom when this testimony was given was profound. It was the moment the subterfuge was fully exposed. Subterfuge is deceit used in order to achieve one's goal. When Eloise took the stand, her words were not an emotional plea, but a steady statement of fact, backed by the undeniable evidence of her years of sacrifice. This demonstrated a mastery of self-advocacy, a critical component of advanced English proficiency, the ability to articulate a complex truth with simplicity and authority. The ultimate checkmate was Vivian's quiet introduction of the police report regarding Celeste's attempted unauthorized entry. This piece of evidence redefined the opposition's behavior, moving it from mere grievance to an active claim of entitlement that bordered on the illegal. It was the moment Judge Carter, acting as the embodiment of equity and codified law, had to intervene. Equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. Judge Carter's dismissal of the case with prejudice, barring the plaintiffs from refiling, was the ultimate judicial vindication of Eloise's sovereignty. Vindication is the action of clearing someone of blame or suspicion. It was a statement that the law values demonstrable truth and self-earned property over entitlement and fabricated claims. As Eloise walked out of the courtroom, declining Rosalind's final, desperate attempt at reconciliation, she did so not in triumph, but in a state of emancipated equilibrium. Emancipated means free from legal, social, or political restrictions. The legal battle taught her the value of precise language and documented fact, but the emotional conflict taught her the value of self-definition. Family doesn't take each other to court over lies. In the pursuit of justice, is the deepest victory found in the affirmation of truth, or in the profound, irreversible loss of an illusion? The aftermath of the court case was not a dramatic burst of joy, but a gradual, quiet denouement, allowing Eloise to slowly, carefully, reconstruct her sense of self and her world. Denouement is the final part of a play, movie, or narrative in which the strands of the plot are drawn together and matters are explained or resolved. The moment she returned to her house, now officially, undeniably, and categorically hers, felt like a literal, physical breathing in of a freedom she had earned. Categorically means unambiguously, unequivocally. The scent of the house, no longer tainted by the fear of loss and the acrimony of betrayal, became the sweet, simple smell of peace. Acrimony is bitterness or ill-feeling. This phase of her story introduces the philosophical lesson of true sovereignty, a concept that transcends mere property ownership. Sovereignty is the authority of a state to govern itself or another state, but here it is used to mean the supreme and independent authority over one's own life and self. Eloise's victory was not merely legal, it was a profound act of personal agency, a final declaration that she, and she alone, was the author of her life's terms. Agency is the capacity of individuals to act independently and to make their own free choices. This connects directly to the historical trajectory of democratic thought, from the Magna Carta to modern civil rights movements, where the struggle for individual rights against the arbitrary will of the powerful is a constant theme. Trajectory is the path followed by a projectile or object moving under the action of given forces, but here it means a course of development. The support she received from her chosen family, Mara, Ashton, Vivian, and even her honest relatives, Raymond and Miriam, underscores a crucial modern paradigm. the formation of affiliative bonds based on shared values rather than mere biological connection. Paradigm is a typical example or pattern of something, a model, and affiliative means relating to or characterized by a desire to associate with others. This found family provides a stark contrast to the dysfunction of her biological family, illustrating that loyalty and support are choices, not birthrights. Dysfunction is the disruption of normal social relations or behavior. This concept has profound relevance to English learning, particularly in understanding idiomatic expressions and cultural concepts of kinship and support. Phrases like "blood is thicker than water" are revealed to be not universal truths, but potentially manipulative tools when used to enforce unjust demands. The victory allowed Eloise to step into the role of the protagonist in her own life, a powerful character development arc. She moved from the quiet, dutiful daughter, the foil to her sister's entitlement, to the architect of her own destiny. Foil is a character whose purpose is to accentuate or contrast with the main character, and architect is a person who designs and constructs buildings, but here used metaphorically. Her realization that fairness didn't live in her childhood home had now been replaced by the understanding that justice could be found in the world outside, provided one had the courage to seek it. The emotional closure came not from any apology from her parents, which was unlikely and, frankly, no longer necessary, but from her own internal validation. The conversation with her parents in the hallway, her quiet, firm statements, "Family doesn't take each other to court over lies," and "you already did and you lost," were the ultimate acts of boundary setting. Boundary setting is the practice of establishing and communicating limits in relationships. This is a vital life skill, far surpassing any legal victory. It is the wisdom gained from the crucible of conflict. Crucible is a heat-resistant container used to melt metals, but here used metaphorically for a severe test or trial. Celeste's final, small moment of doubt, "I just thought it was supposed to be mine," revealed the true nature of her entitlement, not malice, but a deeply ingrained, unexamined belief in a preordained life. Unexamined means not having been subjected to careful scrutiny or thought. This moment offers a final, deep lesson in philosophical teaching. The difference between what one earns and what one expects is the space where true character is built. Eloise, by standing up for her earnings, stood up for her character. Her concluding thoughts, a warm invitation to the audience to share their own struggles, transform her personal story into a universal message of resilience and self-reliance. She has mastered the English of the courtroom and the English of the heart, using her vocabulary not just for communication, but for the fundamental act of self-creation. Self-creation is the process of defining or molding one's own character or identity. What is the difference between resilience and indifference, and at what point does enduring hardship transform from the former into the latter? The fourth chapter delves into the epistemological and ethical ramifications of Eloise's victory, examining the profound philosophical shift that occurs when a person confronts and successfully rejects a systemic injustice, particularly one orchestrated by the very people who are meant to be their moral compass. Epistemological relates to the theory of knowledge, especially with regard to its methods, validity, and scope, and the distinction between justified belief and opinion. The case, Malcolm and Roslyn versus Eloise, was not just a legal battle. It was a battle over narrative control. Who gets to define the truth of a shared past and the terms of a shared future? Narrative control is the power to determine how a story is told, who the protagonists and antagonists are, and what the ultimate meaning of the events will be. Her parents attempted to employ a form of gaslighting, manipulating her reality by fabricating a history of designated funds to make her question her own memory and documented effort. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which a person seeks to sow seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or in members of a targeted group, making them question their own memory, perception, or sanity. Eloise's refusal to accept this fabricated reality, her clear-eyed adherence to the evidence of her own 6 years of sacrifice, was an act of profound intellectual integrity. Integrity is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. This speaks to the universal wisdom of standing by one's empirical truth, a lesson that spans across cultures and is deeply relevant to critical thinking and communication in English. Learning advanced English necessitates the ability to articulate nuance and refute fallacy, two skills Eloise perfected during the trial. Nuance is a subtle difference in or shade of meaning, expression, or sound, and fallacy is a mistaken belief, especially one based on unsound argument. The historical element here is the enduring tension between written law, Eloise's title, pay stubs, the unamended will, and customary law, her parents' subjective family tradition of favoring Celeste. Many historical legal dramas, from the establishment of property rights in the early modern English period to the fights over entailment and inheritance, revolve around this clash. Entailment is a historical English legal term for a settlement of the inheritance of property over a number of generations so that it remains within a particular family. Eloise's win affirmed the modern, meritocratic value of earned value over ascribed status or birthright entitlement. Meritocratic relates to a system in which advancement is based on achievement or ability rather than on class or privilege, and ascribed means attributed to something. The emotional development for Eloise was the painful but necessary act of mourning the family she thought she had. This bereavement was for an illusion, a cherished but ultimately fictitious bond. Bereavement is the state of being deprived of a loved one by death, but here it is used metaphorically for the loss of a relationship. The final confrontation in the hallway was not a fight, but an exorcism of her childhood need for their approval. Exorcism is the expulsion or attempted expulsion of an evil spirit from a person or place, but here used metaphorically for the forceful removal of a psychological burden. When Rosalind offered a final, desperate plea for a fight-free relationship, "I don't want to fight," Eloise's reply, "You already did and you lost," was a powerful demonstration of emotional literacy. Literacy is the ability to read and write, but here it is used to mean competence or knowledge in a particular area. She was speaking the difficult language of boundaries, a vocabulary far more complex than the most advanced legal jargon. Jargon is special words or expressions that are used by a particular profession or group and are difficult for others to understand. Celeste's momentary vulnerability, her smallness in the face of the ruling, serves as a lesson for the audience. Entitlement, when unchallenged, becomes a self-imposed prison, leading to a life built on an artifice that inevitably collapses. Artifice is clever or cunning devices or expedients, especially as used to trick or deceive others. Eloise's victory, in this sense, was a painful act of freedom for both herself and her sister, forcing Celeste to confront a reality that was not cushioned by parental fiat. Cushion means provided with a cushion or made soft, and fiat is a formal authorization or decree. The modern relevance of this story is indisputable. Indisputable means unable to be challenged or denied. It serves as a practical guide for young professionals navigating the complexities of modern wealth creation and familial responsibility. It teaches that one must always document one's accomplishments and protect one's assets with the same diligence one used to acquire them. The story is a dramatic lesson in the power of evidence-based communication. The use of advanced English in her defense, Vivian's precise use of legal terminology, Eloise's clear, factual testimony, was the linchpin of her success. Evidence-based means using verifiable facts or data, and linchpin is a person or thing vital to an enterprise or organization. When the language of love becomes a tool of coercion, what is the ethical duty of the person being coerced? To submit for the sake of peace, or to resist for the sake of truth? The final paragraph acts as a meditation on the concept of wholeness and reclamation, moving beyond the immediate drama of the lawsuit to explore the enduring impact of self-advocacy on the human spirit. Wholeness is the state of forming a complete and harmonious whole. Unity and reclamation is the process of claiming something back or of reasserting a right. Eloise, standing in the orange glow of the sunset in the house she fought for, experiences not just relief, but a deep, somatic feeling of being anchored for the first time. Anchored means firmly attached or secured, rooted. The physical house, the two-story place on a calm street, is now fully congruent with her identity, a physical manifestation of her indefatigable will. Congruent means in agreement or harmony, coinciding, and indefatigable means persisting tirelessly. This moment connects to the philosophical idea that a person's space is a projection of their internal state. A disordered life creates a disordered environment, but a life claimed by sovereignty is reflected in a home that feels entirely one's own. The celebration with Mara, Ashton, and Vivian is not an extravagant party, but a quiet, covenantal gathering of her chosen family. Extravagant means exceeding what is reasonable or appropriate. Excessive and covenantal relates to a covenant, or a formal, solemn, and binding agreement. This scene is the final affirmation of the modern axiomatic truth that family is a verb, not a noun. It is defined by the actions of support, loyalty, and shared values, not by the static fact of bloodline. Axiomatic means self-evident or universally accepted. Vivian's parting thought, "Justice doesn't fix everything, but it does give you room to breathe," is a profound piece of universal wisdom. It acknowledges that the emotional scars of betrayal remain, but the legal victory provides the necessary breathing room, the latitude, for emotional healing to commence. Latitude is freedom from restriction in action or thought. This idea is crucial for English learners to understand the limitations of language. The law can't mandate love and the powerful capability of language. The law can mandate justice and establish boundaries. The messages of pride from Uncle Raymond and Aunt Miriam serve as the final bridge to a corrected past, a confirmation that her grandparents' value of fairness, a cornerstone of English ethical thought, was indeed the orthodox principle, and her parents' actions were the heresy. Orthodox means conforming to what is generally or traditionally accepted as right or true, established and approved, and heresy is belief or opinion contrary to orthodox religious doctrine, but here used for a deviation from established family values. Eloise's ultimate realization, that she didn't just win a case but won her life back, is the ultimate inspirational message. She reclaimed her home, her boundaries, and most importantly, her voice. This metaphorical reclamation of voice is the central lesson for the educational YouTube audience. Metaphorical relating to or characteristic of metaphor, figurative. To master English is to find the linguistic tools to articulate one's truth and defend one's sovereignty. The story is a demonstration that advanced vocabulary and sharp articulation are not just academic exercises, but survival skills in the most personal battles. Her final invitation to the audience is an act of solidarity, turning her private trauma into a public wellspring of inspiration, encouraging them to find their own strength. Solidarity is unity or agreement of feeling or action, especially among individuals with a common interest. Eloise's journey serves as a powerful admonition against the dangers of entitlement and a glorious paean to the power of earned independence. Admonition is an act or action of warning or advising someone, and paean is a song of praise or triumph. It is the ultimate testament to the principle that a life lived with integrity will always ultimately stand taller than a life lived in pretense. Pretense is an attempt to make something that is not the case appear true.